Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it's Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and lordy lord, has it been crazy. So with that, let's dive in, because this week in data breaches, absolutely insane, and thank you so much to the following people that sent me a lot of this information. That would be Jacqueline Wolf, Doug Schramado, Bill Foster, and Vicky Bristol. Thank you very much, and please keep these tips coming. So with that, let's start with North Bay Healthcare Corporation. They filed with Maine after having a security incident that involved medical and financial records for more than 569,000 Americans. So we're talking names, birthdays, social security numbers, passports, financial account, medical biometric, health insurance, driver's license, and state-issued IDs. They also stole some usernames, credit card numbers, expiration dates, and PINs. So not good at all. Heads up, North Bay Healthcare, I guess employees and patients on that one. Moving on. Let's talk about Mars Hydro. You might have actually heard of them. They're a firm out of China that produces a range of Internet of Things devices, such as LED lights, hydroponics equipment, etc., etc., and you know where I'm going. They suffered a massive data breach after an unprotected database containing nearly 2.7 billion records was essentially hit online or discovered online. Cybersecurity researcher and definitely friend of the show, as I've mentioned him a million times, Jeremiah Fowler, identified basically the non-protected password database that included Wi-Fi network names, passwords, IP addresses, device numbers, and more. And remember, make sure you're doing your due diligence on whatever you buy, and usually when it comes to Chinese-made stuff, it's not that secure. Take my word for it, and hopefully you're a long-time listener and you know that. Moving on. I can't believe I have to say this. I have an update in the MoveIt data breach. If you remember that from a couple of years ago, some data breaches never die, and MoveIt is still seeing disclosures. And this past week, utility company PPL Electric basically said, we got caught up in MoveIt. So heads up to you, if you're a customer of PPL, they're a little late to the game in letting you know. Moving on, the Watergate Hotel had a data breach, and I am not going back to Richard Nixon here, but interesting. So the Watergate Hotel out of Washington, D.C., reported that sensitive information of individuals stored on its network was subject to a data breach. Watergate said in a statement the information accessed was related to hotel guests, but the statement also referred to health information and medical information, which obviously means staff was involved as well. They did not respond for requests for clarification, but they did say names, social security numbers, driver's license, and financial account information basically was accessed as a result of this. This actually happened back in April of 2024, so you know there's going to be lawsuits, but we're going to talk about that soon. Moving on. Fillmore County Hospital. On February 13, they basically posted a notice on their website saying that they discovered an incident that resulted in unauthorized party accessing an employee email account. Don't know if it's phishing or compromise or what. Anyway, so sensitive information was names, addresses, email, dates of birth, age, gender, medical record numbers, account balances, payment card information, insurance information, and medical provider information as well. Fillmore County Hospital said that one person's social security number was also impacted, so just one, I guess, but either way, they are sending out notices. And with that, let's go to our mini segment simply entitled, If You Just Spent Money on Cybersecurity, You Wouldn't Be Getting Sued, You Wouldn't Be Losing Your Reputation, I sure as heck wouldn't be talking about you. And with that, let's go to TD Bank. A proposed class action lawsuit seeks at least $5 million in damages for TD Bank customers affected by a data breach. Now, those involved with the suit want to represent customers who received a recent email disclosing this data breach. And according to the lawsuit, the email told customers a bank employee, quote, improperly accessed some of your personal information and may have provided it to an unauthorized third party. We believe this was the cause of the fraudulent activity on your account, end quote. And so here we are, but heads up, TD Bank customers, if you lost money or got hit in some way, shape, or form, or received that letter from TD Bank, you may be entitled to compensation. Moving on, let's talk about Brightline. A $5 million settlement has been agreed to resolve a lawsuit filed against the virtual mental health provider Brightline over the hacking incident by the Clop ransomware gang back in 2023 that resulted in the theft of protected healthcare information of up to 1 million individuals. Brightline, for the record, was one of 30 companies to have their data stolen as a result of using Fortra's Go Anywhere MFT file transfer solution, and that's what Clop hit. And so here we are. Like I said, some data breaches just never die. Moving on, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers, or Packers as they are called up in northern Wisconsin. A Texas man affected by last fall's Packers Pro Shop data breach this past Friday sued the Green Bay Packers Inc. for damages related to the incident. Brian Garcia of San Marcos, Texas, seeks damages from the team. A declaration the team did not properly protect customers' private data, and a determination the case should proceed as a civil class action suit, according to the February 7th civil complaint filed in Brown County Circuit Court. So the Green Bay Packers, good luck to you. I'm in bear country, so here we are. Moving on, that ends our mini segment. If those companies had just spent more on cybersecurity, they wouldn't be getting sued, they wouldn't be ruining the reputation, and I definitely wouldn't be talking about them right now. And with that, let's talk about Prism Media. On January 30th, Prism Media Inc. filed notice with the state of Washington after discovering an unauthorized party was able to access employee email account. Prism said we're talking names, dates of birth, health insurance information, and medical information. Prism also began sending out data breach notifications to those that were impacted. Moving on, Vectra RX Mail Pharmacy, I think you know what they do. On February 6th, they filed with Texas after noticing an unauthorized party was able to access parts of their network. Vectra RX explained sensitive data was hit. We're talking names, social security numbers, dates of birth, prescription information, and dates of services. Vectra RX is sending out letters. Moving on, Ardrys Life, ARDYSS Life. Interesting name. Anywho, on December 7, they filed with California after discovering an unauthorized party was able to access their servers. Now, in this notice, Ardrys explained that the data hit resulted in names, addresses, social security numbers, phone numbers, emails, and other personal information. I can't even read my own notes today. And upon completing investigation, Ardrys is sending out data as well. Moving on, let's talk about Heartland Bank, because on February 7th, they filed with Massachusetts after discovering a data security incident involving their email system. Sensitive information hit includes names and social security numbers, and Heartland Bank is sending out notices as well. Moving on, let's talk about REMSA, or the Regional Emergency Medical Services Authority. They confirmed that they recently experienced a cyber attack, and REMSA Health is looking into the extent of the cyber attack to determine if any patient information had been compromised. If REMSA Health confirms this, you know you'll be getting a letter, and you know there'll be a lawsuit. And with that, we're actually going to go to our finalies today. And there was quite a bit, actually, because we have to talk about what the heck is going on with the U.S. government, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and all of these data breaches you probably keep hearing about in the news. Now, for the record, this is not political. I have the preamble that I always say, which is cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're not immune from it. I don't care if you love or hate what Elon Musk or President Trump or whatever is doing. These are the facts on the ground. Now, a few weeks ago, I actually did a segment asking if Elon Musk and DOGE is causing data breaches throughout the federal government given their access, primarily because there is a process for requesting and gaining access to departmental information, whether it's Department of Education, IRS, whatever it is, or modifying sensitive computer code, which apparently happened at the Department of Treasury. That segment that I did a couple of weeks ago had two key points that I want to talk about real quick. First, while it does indeed seem like it's data breaches galore, I'm actually not so sure, or rather, I wasn't so sure back a couple of weeks ago. So, as I mentioned, basically in the video, podcast segment, etc., that the president can actually declassify anything he wants, except for restricted nuclear material, which essentially takes 3 parties to unrestrict. So, if he granted, essentially, President Trump granted access to Elon Musk officially, well, then maybe it's not technically a data breach. Right? Sure feels like it, but maybe legally under the law, this is completely permissible. And so the second point that I basically made was that I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge. Don't play one on TV. So I wanted to wait to see what the courts have said, what the lawsuits would be. And boy, they're legion. So let's dive into this because there's multiple issues here. And first things first, let's start with this because a leading data privacy group is suing the Trump administration's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and other federal agencies, what the group claims is, quote, the largest, most consequential data breach in U.S. history. Now, the Electronic Privacy, I'm a little under weather, I think. The Electronic Privacy Information Center seeks to stop DOGE's collection of data from millions of federal workers and members of the American public, including the sensitive personal information of tens of millions of U.S. citizens. In addition to DOGE, the group's lawsuit also targets the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, and its acting director, Charles Ezell, as well as the Treasury Department and Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent. Now, on top of this, a federal judge recently, and that federal judge is Paul Engelmayer, basically issued an emergency order about a week ago Saturday that barred the Trump administration from providing access to sensitive and private financial information about hundreds of millions of Americans. The judge also ordered Elon Musk's DOGE to destroy any data it had already accessed. But here's the thing. Once you have a copy of something, it's very difficult to basically assure that it hasn't been copied over and over and over, or that the party actually destroyed it. This is the problem we have in ransomware events, where the gang, we're just banking on them getting paid and not ruining their reputation to either destroy it or keep a copy of the data if they claim they've destroyed it and not spread it out. But this is the issue. Once the data is gone, it can be copied. And so for all we know, they copied it to a server somewhere, or they backed it up on a flash drive, whatever. And so that's a very hard one to basically investigate and deploy, especially when the government apparatus is in support of DOGE, right? Because the investigators are going to be part of the Trump administration, as is DOGE. But on top of this, there's even more news, because a lawsuit in Maryland was filed by the American Federation of Teachers, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association, the National Federation of Federal Employees, 6 individuals, and the EFF. So that was filed this past Monday in the U.S. District Court for Maryland, and they basically said that DOGE gained access to records of both government employees and people outside the government. Now, since basically a judge has agreed that this is a data breach, these are technically, the precedent has been set, these are data breaches as defined by the law, as defined by these lawsuits and the adjudication thus far of similar lawsuits. So this obviously is a huge thing, because another lawsuit includes the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO, the Association of Administrative Law Judges, and individuals who are current or former government workers, and at least half a dozen other lawsuits in similar veins that I could find that are targeting DOGE or essentially this type of data breach. So Public Citizen Inc. et al. V. Donald J. Trump and the Office of Management and Budget. The other one is Gerald Lentini, Joseph Ehrlich, and National Security Counselors, v. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, Office of Management and Budget, Office of Personnel Management, Executive Office of the President, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Russell Vought, Scott Kupor, and Donald Trump. Now, another lawsuit is American Public Health Association et al., the Office of Management and Budget, Acting Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and the Department of Government Efficiency. On top of it, we have the Center for Biological Diversity, the Office of Management and Budget, and on and on and on. So, here it is. And on top of all of these lawsuits, and the adjudications thus far that have been positive for the plaintiffs, saying, yes, this is a data breach, DOGE itself actually caused data breaches in the past week or so, including one that contained classified information, and that was basically a no foreign classified documentation, meaning no foreigners, only Americans can access this in the government apparatus. So you're working for Canada for the U.S. government, or you're Mexican and in the U.S. government, you can't see this. So we found out that essentially anybody on the planet could push updates to the doge.gov website, because they didn't actually secure the database that they published, and people were adding tables to this. You could extract data, you could see a whole bunch of stuff, because then they posted classified information about the size and staff of a U.S. intelligence agency on this new website, and that raises bigger concerns about where Elon Musk's programmers got the information and what they're doing with it. Remember, the judge ordered them to destroy a lot of this information, But here we are. So, an easy search on the site showed that DOGE's database provided details on the NRO, or National Reconnaissance Office. That's the federal agency, for the record, that designs, builds, and maintains U.S. intelligence satellites. And not only are NRO's budgets and headcounts classified, but the prospect, essentially, of an outside tech team meddling in sensitive personnel information is now setting off alarms in the intelligence community, not just the legal community as well. Exposing basically intelligence operatives, intelligence agents, or intelligence employees to the world in some way, shape, or form means they can be targeted by foreign governments for phishing attacks, for anything else. You break into their lives, you can potentially break into the NRO and other agencies, and that obviously is a huge thing. And on top of this, it now looks like there's a movement at the state government level to not give data breach victims relief through litigation. Now, let's go through this, because I think this is a precedent-setting thing, and this, quite frankly, is I guess, kind of shocking to me, and I'll explain why in a second. So with this, we're going to go to the state of Nebraska, because their lawmakers have advanced a bill from basically what they call the general file on February 12th, that essentially this bill would prevent a private entity from being liable in a class action resulting from a cybersecurity event in certain circumstances. And it always starts with certain circumstances. So this bill, LB 241, introduced by Senator Bob Hallstrom of Syracuse, basically stated that private entities that experience a data breach would not be liable in a class action unless the cybersecurity event was caused by the entity's willful, wanton, or gross negligence. Now, the bill defines a cyber event as one that leads to unauthorized access to, disruption, or misuse of non-public information, such as social security or driver's license numbers, or financial account information, such as security codes, passwords, all that kind of stuff. Now, qualifying private entities under this bill would include corporations, religious or charitable organizations, associations, businesses in general, and nonprofits. So in other words, corporations, nonprofits, religious entities, etc., could seek exemption from class action. Now, Hallstrom said the bill is meant to address the recent surge, quote unquote, in class action lawsuits related to data breaches. And to be fair, Representative Hallstrom is correct. I do a breaches of the week every Sunday, and there are lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and they have accelerated in speed. I've mentioned that here on this segment as well. So such suits have basically have the potential to clog up the courts, he said, and often focus on losses such as identity theft rather than actual monetary loss. So here's the thing, because there have been several times where state action basically has led to precedent for federal action. So I could see this expanding. In other words, hey, this is a great idea. Let's indemnify the corporations. Obviously, we have a president in the White House right now that is very pro-corporation. So this could be a novel concept for federal lawmakers to basically adopt nationwide, not just in a single state. Now, I know many people, for the record, look at class actions or think of class actions and the attorneys that bring class actions. It's kind of like bottom feeders, ambulance chasers. But hear me out, because there's actually a serious benefit to class action. It actually helps to shape proper behavior and governance when the written law may be vague or, quite frankly, fall down. And here's why. So if a class action goes against, let's say, a major competitor in some field that had some massive data breach that was negligent, or, they had lack of control, etc., all of the competitors look at that and say, I don't want to be them. I don't want to ruin my reputation, etc., etc. When Target had the massive data breach and they disclosed that publicly, I promise you, the Walmarts of the world were tightening up the ship. And the reason being is you see the fallout of what happens to these things. So this has the ability to actually change and sculpt the law. I did a lecture about a year ago or so at the University of Loyola School of Law, and this was actually one of the other speakers that was talking about the benefits of class actions, and I hadn't thought about it in that way. They set precedent. And by virtue of that, it tightens everybody up. Air Canada is another good example. That was an individual suing Air Canada, wanting essentially a fare refund in full for like a bereavement fare. The AI chatbot said, yeah, we'll give you that. The humans at Air Canada eventually kicked in, caught it, and said, no, we only give you $200 as opposed to the full $2,000 or whatever it roughly was. And the courts in Canada basically said, no, this is acting as a representative, this chatbot of Air Canada, and therefore what the chatbot told the customer is correct. You should have trained your chatbots better. So what happened? The Chevrolets of the world, the United Airlines, the American Airlines of the world, whatever rivals Air Canada and Canada, were looking at their chatbots saying, is it trained this way? Is it proper? Class actions have the ability to improve these systems. We're not clogging up the courts per se, and the just how vague, the vagueness of essentially what the bill says is essentially, well, if you're liable or gross negligent, et cetera, et cetera. What does that mean? So by virtue of that, you can have an employee that is grossly negligent, but an excellent cybersecurity program and you're exempt, or you can say, oh yeah, well, we have a firewall, so we're exempt. Well, maybe it's a crappy firewall. Like where is the standard there? And that is so open to interpretation. So I'll leave it at that for you. As I'm looking at this, and again, especially when it comes to like the DOGE thing, I think that as we're looking at this, it is starting to look like a data breach. And the reason why it's looking like a data breach, not just the optics of it, which I said a couple of weeks ago in that segment, but now we have legal precedent that basically says, yes, this isn't the way this works. If you're going to shut down or gain access to, let's say, a department, you want to close a Department of Education or whatever, I know President Trump has said stuff like that, that's actually an act of Congress. Congress is the one that has to approve cabinet-level departments. Something, for the record, the Department of Government Efficiency is not. It's never had a congressional vote. But if Congress votes to defund it because they actually run the bill, then yes. Until then, having access into this kind of information by Elon Musk and his team does appear to be a violation of that congressional law. And again, I'm not an attorney. Another judge could come out and say, no, this is perfectly legal. And okay, I've got to follow the law on this. But when we have judges saying, okay, you need to stop what you're doing, you need to exit, you need to destroy data, that's really, truly what is happening here. And you don't see that if everything was being basically above board and legal. So I think this is going to be an interesting time, basically, in American history as they are going through and making the government more efficient or shutting things down or doing whatever they're doing. And so by virtue of that, I just want to make sure that as these things happen, and again, you could love or hate what's going on here, I just want us to be secure and private. I'm not adjudicating your political beliefs, but I think it behooves all of us to understand where these issues are, and by virtue of that, speak to that and understand that, and to say, hey, I'm a big fan of President Trump, but I don't want my data breached. I don't want it, basically being copied out by a third party that hasn't even gone through, a classification vetting and all of that. I talked about that in my previous segment. And so that's something I think of deep concern for anybody, and that's not political. And if you look at the bipartisan nature with which cybersecurity has traditionally been treated, even in the last decade, by the federal government, I think most people should agree with me in that sense. We see Republicans and Democrats voting on cybersecurity bills almost unanimously. And where else in the government do you see that? So I leave you with that. I think this is a huge issue that we are walking into. I don't know what the end result of this is going to look like, but right now it's looking like a problem, and I think that's something we need to address. So with that, those were your breaches of the week, and according to the judges, our government is being breached as well. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private, and please don't send me hate mail over this one. Take care.